All right, welcome back. I think we're on part 4 now of this ReadyPlayerMe tutorial series. And I think we're going to do with this one is I've already switched back to WebGL. And we're going to see what it would take to actually have a player that we can move around. And I think we'll choose third-person camera for this. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at our scene. Let's create a space for us to actually interact on. So I'm just going to put some stuff together using cubes and some materials. I'll pause. You have to watch all that. All right, there we go. Just some cubes and some spheres to kind of add a little bit of difference around the scene so we can actually tell we're moving. And I'm just going to put them all into a parent object to make them cleaned up a little bit. All right, now what we need to do is create what's going to be our player. So I'm going to do that by creating an empty game object. And so this will be our player. And let's go ahead and add a character controller. If we turn on the gizmos here, we can actually see where we're at in the scene. And sometimes I'll actually add a capsule mesh to the scene so I can see it easier. One thing I never understood was the default character controller settings, which I bet if I really dug deep into Unity's preferences, I could probably change that. But it's always like really wide and actually a little bit too tall. I like to set mine to 1.8 meters because if I'm not mistaken, that's close to my real life height, which is like 6'1", which is still pretty tall. And I like to put my radius at like 0.3. Even though it usually doesn't encapsulate like my entire avatar, it gets pretty close. I think the shoulders usually will like brush on the side of it on most avatars I use. And let's just slowly bring this down to the ground. And just slightly over, it'll set itself on the ground when it's time. Make sure, of course, you have a ground collider, which I created it with a cube, so it's got one, so we're in good shape there. All right, one thing that's bothering me is my player's not at 0, 0, 0, but also my cube's not at 0, 0, 0, so that's a little odd, so I'm just going to fix that real quick. Don't mind me. Fix that. All right, there we go, all better. And my player's way over here. Let's put my player at 0, 0. That's still a bit weird. Why is it like that? Oh, because my environment wasn't at 0, 0, 0. That's why. All right, there we go. I like that better. All right, so now let's create some. Let's do the camera first, I guess. So, I guess the easiest way nowadays to do the camera is with Cinemachine, and I don't really love Cinemachine, but it can get the job done pretty quick. So I'm going to get Cinemachine. There's Cinemachine Studio that includes timeline, sequences, FBX exporter. Cinemachine's a big main one. Recorder's a great tool too. I'll go ahead and just install the whole thing, so I might want to use Recorder later. So I'll pause while this is installing. This isn't designed to be a Cinemachine tutorial by any means. But we're going to go ahead and try to implement the Cinemachine camera. Which I'm not seeing a Cinemachine menu anymore. Looks like it's down here now. So let's do, what is it? Virtual camera? Or do we want to pick one of these guys? What if we pick free look camera? And then you can add extension, third person aim. That might be something we want. I'll fiddle with this because I don't want this to be a big part of the tutorial, and then I'll show you the settings when I'm done. So real quick, you don't really need to worry about the main camera. You need to have a main camera, but you don't need to worry about it. Everything you're going to change for the most part is going to be here on your Cinemachine camera. First thing I did is I put the player on the follow and on the look at. A lot of times it's worth creating a child on the player to create a different target. And then like you can move it forward, maybe a little bit higher up. So it's still with the player, but it just gives a way for the camera to look at something just offset from the player. Cinemachine also has good options for offsetting it. But I wanted to show you, before I go any deeper, I'm actually going to go ahead and load an avatar into the scene, make it a child of our player so we actually can tell how well our camera is lined up. Go ahead and rename this avatar. Let's put it on the player, and let's zero it out. All right, is our player really floating in the air? No, the issue is that our avatar pivot point is at the feet, but our player's pivot point is not. But that's easy enough. We can set the center up 1. Is that too much? I mean, I think that's close. What are we looking at this avatar? It's way down here below the feet. Really, you would think 1 would be perfect, not 0.5. Yeah, it should be 1, but I'm going to offset it just a little bit. Let's look at the front here. And I'm just going to bring that down to where it's right down at the feet. So something like so. All right, and then I'm going to take this player and then get it back down towards the ground. Look at those feet. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just slightly over, and then when we hit play, it'll be right on the ground. All right, great. So now we have an idea of what our camera is looking at. All right, so let's adjust this to look at our player better, which, oh yeah, that's right. I said I was gonna do that off camera. Hold on a minute. And I'm gonna show this though. So this is where the real magic happens, down here near the bottom. And I removed the extension I had. We might put a different one. But this top, middle, and bottom rig. So what's happening is I don't fully grasp this, and this is one of the things I don't really like about this. I don't really like the orbiting rigs. But yeah, so it has like 3 different rigs where the camera will like orbit around depending on where you put your mouse. But anywho's, let's look at the middle rig since that's about the one where you use the most. And we want to aim with a composer. It brings us this nice little targeting things where we can see where it's looking. So it's aiming at our game object, right? Because that's where our pivot point. Actually, it's not really our pivot point, right? Because isn't our player's pivot point? No, it is now. Okay, cool. So let's go back to our free look. Okay, so now all we have to do is just adjust. We can just adjust these values how we want it. So we can just, there we go. Now our player is nice and framed. And I think there might be a way that we can orient it down a little bit. But I think that has to do with our height of our middle rig, because our middle rig is just kind of slightly above the head. But if we move the middle rig up higher, there we go. We start looking down at the player a little bit. And maybe we want to be, I can't really tell what we're doing there with the Z. Oh, we're looking further ahead of the object or further behind it. I don't know. Maybe the back of the head is kind of where we want to have the our third person follow. I don't know. It's really a matter of preference and how you want to set this up. But really the middle rig, I kind of dig that spot. Top rig, this is kind of weird. Top rig, I think we can do, let's track object, but the top rig can be even higher up. And going on with the radius, that's not too bad. And then I'm gonna make the radius even bigger, something like that. But when we're this high up, let's look slightly further ahead of the player. And then the bottom rig, I really don't get the point of the bottom rig that much. We're looking at the feet. I'm gonna make the radius a little wider, and maybe we aim just a little bit higher, something like that. And let's call that good. So if we click off of that, and if we hit play, let's see how our mouse interacts. All right, so this is where we are so far. So when we're down here, we're in the bottom rig. If I bring my mouse up, we start to get in the middle rig. Right? And then if we bring the mouse even higher, now we're in the top rig. All right, so that's just, it's not too bad of a camera. It's gonna get the job down for now, but we're not gonna spend a whole lot of time making it look like I would like it, because you might have completely different preferences. So it's time to add some game logic to this player. We're doing a lot more than just ReadyPlayerMe stuff, because I know a lot of people getting started with ReadyPlayerMe are also just getting started in general. So let's just go ahead and create a script for moving our player. So let's just call this player movement. All right, so then I'm gonna go onto my player, and I'm just gonna drag and drop this player movement script. Let's double click on it to edit it. Here we are. All right, as you've seen me do in part 1, I'm going to delete that stuff. I'm going to create a namespace for my game. ReadyPlayerMe demo. Shift enter. Copy the class, cut it, paste it, and then I'll add that stuff back later. All right, so we want to be able to move our controller. All right, so in order to move our controller, we need to have our controller as a component. So I'm just gonna do a serialized field so we can see it in the inspector. Private character controller. All right, and then I'm going to do a video series at some point on Unity's new input system and all the different ways you can use it. Those of you who've been watching my channel before, you know that I've done a lot of Playmaker tutorials, and there's really only one way you can use the new input system. But there's probably at least 3 different ways you can utilize inputs and input actions with the new input system. But I'm going to just show you how I've been doing it lately. And what I like to do is I like to, just for fun, let's put a header here. Let's do, we don't need one. I'm going to do a serialized field so we see it in the inspector, and then a private input action reference. And what are we going to call this? Our move vector? No, our move action. Do that. All right, so this doesn't exist because it wants, don't forget this trick, hover over, alt enter, and it shows you some suggestions. And we actually don't want any of these. We actually want to use, that's weird that it doesn't know what we want. But we want to use Unity engine.input system. What's going on here? Why isn't it loaded, showing everything? Oh, you know what my issue is? I haven't installed the new input system because for some reason it is not default yet in Unity. Oh, it's insane. I think the reason it's not the default in Unity is because so many asset store assets also don't assume you have the new input system. But we're just gonna go in here to the player settings. I believe it's in here. Yeah, input manager, switch to the new, and that's why. We'll save it all. It's gonna reset here. All right, so now let's alt enter. Now that I have it installed, and it's still not seeing it. Stop doing that. Using Unity engine dot input. Where is it? What is going on? This is very strange. You know what the problem, the issue is because I have, it's not fully compiling because I have compiler errors. So let's save this like that now. And where's our project? Come back over here. Okay, you're happy now. Go back to the script. Serialize field. Private input action reference move action. Now if I hover this, alt enter, it should say, it's not doing it. Using Unity engine dot input. I am losing my mind. All right, so when in doubt, I'm just going to close Visual Studio. Sure, save that. And then I'm going to come back to the project, and then I'm going to right-click Player Movement, and I'm going to open the C# project. For some reason, that sometimes refreshes its brain. All right, moment of truth. Using Unity. Is it not Unity Engine, maybe? Maybe it's Unity Editor.input? No. It's Unity Engine dot in Unity dot input. No, it's Unity engine dot input system. What the heck is going on? Okay, well, I told the player that I was using the new input system. I swore that I installed it for you too, but it's not installed. I just went to the package manager. I need to install it. So my bad. You know what I think it is I do so many VR projects. When I do the XR interaction system and I install the systems, I think it automatically does the input system, but I could be wrong. But I'm going to go ahead and get so there are some good samples in here. Like if you're doing mobile and you want on-screen controls, import this package because it'll actually give you on-screen buttons you can use that'll automatically tie to the input system. It's really handy to have that because sometimes creating input controls is a pain in the butt. Unity Remote, I didn't realize that was part of the input system, but that's a great tool if you want to actually see what the game plays like on your mobile device. I have such a huge pain. It's a huge pain though. It doesn't always work for me. Does it already have the other samples though? Does it come with the defaults? I'm gonna search default. I like using, yeah. Well, no, it's the default style sheet. Why aren't the, what do I get for doing so much VR, not regular stuff? Normally the samples would also include the generic defaults inputs. I'm not even seeing a way to install them here. All right, my mind's blown right now because I have never had to create the default inputs, but apparently I'm going to need to do that. I've never had to do that before. So I'm just going to create a new folder here, and I'm just going to call this my inputs folder. And I'm going to create I've never had to do this. When I come down, I'm going to create input actions, and I'm just going to call this my default inputs. This is so weird. I've never come in here and seen this blank. I've always used the samples. I don't know why I don't have the samples. It must just be because I normally use XR, and it's in there for XR, or if I installed this some way, I don't normally do it. But that is really weird. So I'm just going to add a control scheme. We're going to call this the default control scheme. This scheme, something like that. Enter. Save. Go. Action maps. I'm just going to call this default action map. And I'm going to have a new action called move. And I'm going to say this is a value. And it's going to be a vector 3. And now I need some bindings. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add an up, down, left, right, back, forward binding. And we're going to call this WASD. And so we're just going to come in here and we're going to listen for W. And we're going to come over here and we're going to listen for S. We're going to come here and we're going to listen for A. Then we're going to come here and we're going to listen for D. I have no recollection of forward backward like ever being here. I don't know what those are. I don't know if there's been an update to the input system or what, but I'm just going to delete those. Up, down, left, right's all I want. And I'm going to take all these and I'm going to control D. And then I'm going to add my arrows. So I'll pause while I'm doing that. All right, there we go. We got that. And somebody comment down below if you know why I can't seem to find the default inputs anymore. It's just so weird. All right, but for now, that's all we need. This move action, because that's all we're referencing in the script. It's still going to drive me bonkers why it's not. Doesn't have the default input actions in there. All right, let's come back over here to, where did we leave off? Let's close this because I don't know which one's the right one. Let's not save. Let's come back to the player, go back to player movement. All right, so we should now, right, for the sake of all that is holy, be able to type uniengine.imp. There it is. I was going to lose my mind if it wasn't there this time. All right, serialized field, private input action reference. We're going to call this move action. All right, so if you look in the documentation on the input system and how to use the input actions, I've never seen an example that does it the way that I'm doing it now. This is the way I prefer it. It's probably due to my visual scripting background with Playmaker. But what it does is, like, the actions that I created in our inputs, right? Every action I create, it creates this little, they're probably scriptable objects, I'm guessing. But I can just click on this dot. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now it all of a sudden has them. What the heck? We should only be seeing mine, but now it's saying, oh, we have the inputs. We were just hiding them from you. It's in the packages folder, default input actions. Oh, well. Packages. I already lost track of words. Input system, actions. Where's the samples? It's blowing my mind. Oh well. Player, move action. Yeah, it says it's in input system, plugins, player input, default input actions. That's like everything we could possibly want. You know what I think I did? Normally what I do, and this is probably why I didn't notice it. Normally what I do, because in Playmaker, in order to use the input actions, we also have to have a player input component on the player, but I haven't actually seen the need to do that yet in C#, unless I'm losing my mind. I do have kind of a crazy headache right now. And so here I would have seen, oh, we do have default input actions. And now if I double click it, we can actually see there's move already set up for us. And I'm going to use this. I'm now going to go back to this folder, and you're just going to say goodbye to that one. And back on our player, I'll just go ahead and keep the player input there because it's probably important. And the move action that I want, though, is going to be player move. All right, but something else, some other way we could have done this is rather than access the input action reference, I could have done serialized field private input action. Let's call it action. We'll call it Actino. Why not? Okay, save that and go back. And what this will let you do is rather than have one that's pre-set up, you can create a binding right now. So I can just add a binding and I can just pick my own binding. The reason that I wouldn't do that is I don't know. That's not going to, it's going to make it more difficult if you want to add a way for players to customize their controls. All right. So like, especially with like VR, there's very limited number of controls anyways. So what I can do in VR is if a player wants to change, you know, well, I don't want to move with my left hand, I want to move with my right hand, I can just change this variable from the left hand locomotion move action to the right hand locomotion move action. And bada bing, bada boom, it works. All right, but that's what we're doing right here. And so we need our private. And because I like seeing everything in the inspector, we don't really need to do this. We could get it on awake, but I'm just going to get it now. Private. Oh, we've already gotten the character controller. I just pointed with my finger like you could see it. Private character controller. We have the controller there. So really, that's probably all that we need. I just need to take the player and drag it onto itself so it gets the character controller right there. I guess I haven't saved yet because it still shows the input action option. That updates there. All right, so now let's actually create our, oh no, we can't start creating our move methods yet. We have to, when it comes to actions, we need to enable them and we need to subscribe to them. So I'm going to subscribe to them first, like we could potentially do with UI buttons. So I'm going to private void awake, because we're going to do this on awake, shift enter there. And then I'm going to input action. No. I'm going to move action. That's our input action reference. But we need to get the action, and then we need to get performed. And then we want to, I just realized we don't need to subscribe to this one because we're going to be getting this value all the time. But if I had like a button that I wanted to subscribe to, this is how I would do that. But on awake, we actually don't need to do anything for this. But we do need to private void on enable. We need to enable the action. So move action dot action dot enable, not enabled, but enable. Get back up there, like so. And then, oops, boop, boop. Then we need private void on disable, move action dot disable, and that's important. Okay. And then now we can come down here to. Really, I guess we could do an update function here. So private void update, and we want to move our controller. So if we type in our controller and we hit period, there's a lot of stuff there. I want to use simple move. So there's simple move and then there's move. Move doesn't account for gravity. You have to do that yourself. But simple move will automatically apply gravity, so that's swell. What does simple move want? It just wants a vector 3 that it's calling speed. Interesting. All right, let's backpedal a little bit. Before we start moving, we need to get some value. So we need to get our input value. So we're going to go to move action dot read value, and it's a vector 2 because it's a move vector. But if you don't know for sure what your action's read values are, hey, it could happen because we're using the defaults. You can just come in here, find the action, and see what its control type is. All right, so that's how we get that. So we just type vector 2 in here. All right, and then, well, we need to set it to something. So I'm just going to create a private vector 2 and call it the, I'm just going to call it the input move. Then we will call this input move equals. All right, but we can't just move based on this vector because, I mean, we could move our player in world space, but if your camera moves at all, that's going to get really weird. So what we need to do is we need to have our camera impact the values of this vector. And you'll see how we do that here. Now we could just get the main camera because it's almost always going to be the main camera that you're interacting with, but just in case it's not the main camera, let's just create a new private serialized field, and we're just going to call this camera, and then we'll call this relative camera because we want to move relative to the direction of our camera. And if we go back into our project, find our script, and then we can drop our camera in here. Now, which camera do you think we're going to put? Are we going to put our virtual camera, or are we going to put our main camera? Once, twice. It's our main camera because our main camera is our main camera. This is a real camera. Don't think of your virtual cameras as cameras. Think of them as more as just transforms or points in the world that the real camera is going to move to. So, and even then, this isn't necessarily a point it's going to move to. This just has a bunch of logic telling the main camera how to move. So your main camera is your main camera is your main camera. All right, got to have the camera component. All right, back to our script. So in order to make our input relative to the camera, we need 2 directions from the camera. We need to know what our camera's forward is, and we also need to know the camera's right. So what we're going to have is a new vector that we're going to create based on the camera. So down here in our update, we'll just do it here. So we will have camera forward. First, we need to say it's a vector camera forward. And what are we going to set that equal to? We're just going to say this equals our relative camera dot forward. Maybe I have to get the transform dot forward. There we go. You know what? We could have saved a little bit if I made this not private camera relative camera, but if I made this a transform, then I can get rid of that. We hit save. We go back to the project, and I don't know what I was thinking. We don't want the actual camera component. That's ridiculous. We want it to transform. Great. All right, so we get its forward, and then we need to get its right. So we're going to call this camera right, and that's going to be relative camera dot right. Okay, so we know where its forward is, and we know where its right is. We also want to zero the y-axis of these vector 3s. And the reason for this is we don't want to confuse our move vector by any type of rotations of the camera. And I may sound like I know what I'm talking about. I might sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's more leaning towards, this is just how everybody does it. And so that's why I'm doing it. So we're going to take our camera forward dot y, and we're going to make it 0. And we're going to take our camera right dot y, and we're going to make it 0. Thank you, Visual Studio, for fixing my typos. And then we're also going to normalize these. So camera forward equals itself, but normalized, which basically makes it a value between 0 and 1, right? And camera right equals camera right dot normalize. Boom. All right, and so now we're going to finally move. So let's take our controller dot simple move. I already have that written. No, I got rid of it. And that's going to be shoot. Sorry, I was totally spacing. It's going to be our inputs. So what are our inputs? Our input move vector right here. We're already getting that. We're gonna take our input move vector and we want to get the y because that's gonna be our forward direction. And we're gonna take that times our camera forward. And now we need to add it to our input move vector x times camera right. But we also need to multiply this by time delta time, and we also probably want to multiply by some sort of speed float. So let's put all of that in another set of parentheses, and then we're going to multiply by time dot delta time, and then speed. It doesn't know what speed is, but we're going to do that now. So let's just copy all that, paste, make this a float, and call it speed. Save. I'm not sure if this will work. Also, we need to close our parentheses. Because this is actually my first time ever doing it in C#. I've been doing some C# projects, but they've been VR, so they've been working a little bit different. And before that, I was using Playmaker, and I didn't have to code it all. It was just visual. But let's see how this works. So, jeez. This is another big thing that annoys me, since Unity doesn't treat the input system as default. Our event system is really upset. So we just got to come over here to the event system and replace it with that, and then we should be. Oh no, that wasn't my issue. Somewhere in my script, I'm trying to read input using the input class. Oh, Cinemachine's doing that. Dagnabbit. I forget how I remind Cinemachine that we're using the new input system. You'd think it would just figure it out. Even though when we click these errors, it was highlighting the main camera for me, at least all the ones I was. We actually need to fix the free look, because what's happening here is it's trying to get these mouse values, and these are using the old input system on the y-axis and the x-axis. But if we come down here and add the component Cinemachine input provider, we can now add an input action to handle the x-y axis. And really, I think the one that's built in, the player look, should probably work, because player look is using the mouse pointer for that. So let's just see if that works. Yeah, so there's Cinemachine is very happy. It's very, very quick. Let's see if we can move. I totally cannot move my character. All right, so there's something else going on here. Do you see what's probably causing my issue? Yeah, we created the speed variable, but we didn't actually give it a speed. I'm going to put it up for 3, and let's see if it works now. Playing. Dang, I'm not a huge Cinemachine. I don't get the free look camera. It just doesn't make sense to me. I moved for a moment, but I am not moving, and I'm not stuck, right? Oh, yeah, because I'm like, this made it look like I was inside this, but that's just a gizmo. Yeah, I'm, if you look, I am moving. My transform is moving, but something's wrong with my math or something, because it's not moving enough. All right, I figured it out. And the reason the issue was that I was multiplying by time delta time, and that's only if you're using translate function. Since we're using controller simple move, we don't need time delta time. That's what was making us not move. So I think I actually switched things around, but it's the same formula, except I took out time delta time. Now if we hit play, it's going to look a little weird because our avatar doesn't move with us. Doesn't change to look the direction that we want it to look, but we are totally moving. Like if I turn, geez, I hate I hate the third person. I hate the preload camera. All right, so like if I go like this, if I go up, we should be going in the direction of his left arm. And I am. Down, left, right. Move the camera like this. Now we should be going, I'm going to hit up and go towards his back. And we are. And one thing that's weird with this, oh man, I hate this camera. All right, so what are we doing next? We should probably have our avatar look in the direction that we want to move. Let's go back in our script here. And if I'm not mistaken, this should be pretty straightforward. Let's get another private transform. And this is going to be our avatar. And I believe we can just take our avatar dot look at. There's also a smooth look at a thing. No, maybe this is Playmaker. All right, so look at. And then for look at, it just wants a transform target. Should have the ability to use a vector 3 here also. So I can just use camera forward times input move vector y plus camera right times input move vector dot x. I think we can just do that. And let's see if that works. I really think it will. I almost forgot we need to put our avatar into the transform slot. Oh, that's something. Oh, man. It's totally not looking in the move direction. This is what I get for staying up too late doing these. Now let's change some stuff up a bit. You can see I deleted a big chunk. So we got our input move vector read value. Okay, everything below that, let's delete. So here we're normalizing the camera forward and camera right. But then we're going to multiply these values by this input move vectors, x and y's. And I don't think it's going to stay normalized if we do that. So we're going to create a new vector 3 for our move vector and also make sure it's normalized. And it'll also clean up our script a little bit. So we're going to do a vector 3, and we're just going to call it our move direction. How about that? And this is going to equal our camera forward times input move vector dot y plus our camera right times our input move vector dot x. Okay, so that's our move direction. But let's also normalize our move direction by doing this. Boom. All right, move direction equals move direction dot normalize. All right, and now that we've done that, now we can worry about making our avatar look in that direction. So if our move direction is not a null vector, not a null, but a 0 vector 3, then we'll just take our avatars forward and we're going to set it to our move direction. Easy peasy. So now if we come back over here, oh, you know what? We're not moving. Let's do our controller dot simple move, and then now we have a lot less stuff to type in here because now we can just put our move direction times speed. Now I think I put everything back. All right, so this should work. Come on, Unity, catch up to me. I still hate the camera, but I don't want to dig into that in this tutorial. So here we're up here, going forward, right, going down, left, going at an angle, another different angle, helicopter. Boop, 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 boop. All right, cool. So, yeah, we're moving. How long is this recording? Hey, we're already at 40 minutes. This should have been less than 30. I'm sorry for the little mistakes. But in the next part, we're going to look at animating the movements. And then I think after we're animating the movements, we're going to also look at, okay, well, what about at runtime? How do we do this to where we can load in any avatar's glib URL at runtime? So that's what we're looking forward to in the next part or two. So see you then. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hey, come hang out in the Discord. See you later.